Hello?
Hey, Des.
Hey, I'm gonna mute this shit. You
Sorry.
did it!
Oh, don't even get me started.
Are we live? We're streaming right now.
Yes, we are live right now.
Are we waiting for Vendetta?
I put the link in the chat, right?
You put the hangout in the chat. I don't have
The YouTube
the
link.
YouTube,
I don't even
but
know how to. I don't even know where to get the
don't
YouTube link.
don't worry about it. I'll pull it up. Let's see, because I'm subscribed to you, so if we're streaming, then it's on here. I just gotta find it.
This is literally the most uh, user non-intuitive, non-friendly system I've ever encountered in my life, and I work with SAP every day, so that's saying something.
And yet, all these children have figured it out.
Well, as Jay was just saying when I was on the phone with him, well, if you were just on your phone, you just have to hit one button to turn on your forward facing camera and you'd be broadcasting to the world. It's your fault you're on a computer. Yeah, right. Of course.
Okay, hang on. I've got to figure out how to switch to my other
Uh,
account.
shit. Nope. Um,
Uh,
oh,
am I
wait.
subscribing to myself? Oh,
How do we get a YouTube link? Do you know?
no, I'll get it in just a second.
Whoa.
Mm-mm-mm.
What the fuck? Oh, there it is up top. What?
God bless. Okay, switch account to this one and subscriptions and YangBang. Okay, and pause that.
This is like fucking rocket surgery.
Rocket surgery. YangBang. Is that what it's called? Oh God. Is he Carrie Pippa VV right now? I think so.
You talking about Vendetta?
Yeah, Carrie Pippa VV.
Yeah. That's him.
Okay. Um and y'all were and you want
We
what
were
is it, a rundown of European news?
well. Maybe you slept through the chat for the last 72 hours, but he hit me up the other night while I was at work in the Lounge of Illusion chat, talking about how he went to a live Q&A with Yang and he wants to talk about it. And then this morning we were talking about how the government of Finland all resigned. That's why it's
Oh,
okay. I guess
okay.
I'm talking to myself.
No, you're not. I'm curating a tweet here.
Get that faggot in here. I can't really use my phone at the moment since it's my modem. Can anyone tell me what the fuck's going on with Vendetta?
No, just hang on a second. Let's see.
Uh, Anyone else in the chat? Anyone else in our Illusion DM group who wants to come on is more than welcome. Although I know they're all scaredy cats.
Or they're scaredy cats. Why? Ah, frack. For anybody joining us, I don't know if anybody has, but we are waiting for Vendetta to click the Hangout link and join us.
I'm
I'm
glad
gonna
I'm
go.
not the only. I'm glad I'm not the only person whose fucking internet is being homosexual and retarded about trying to do a hangout.
Is it? Is that what he's saying? He can't get in?
No, he's saying that his browser is being fucking retarded about hangouts, and he'll be here as soon as he can.
Oh, okay.
Seriously, I should be able to go to youtube.com, log in, and hit start hangout. I should not have to go to YouTube, to the creator studio, and then to hangout, no, and then to live broadcasting, and then to create event, and then schedule the event. And then it keeps telling me to add a what I can't even remember the word I'm looking for, but some sort of third party emulator software. And why don't
Do
I
you
just
have
have
the
a
do you have the OBS download? I think maybe you're going into the beta instead of the classic.
No.
Because you have to tell it to go into the classic.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I took it
Okay.
out of the beta and took it to the classic. At the
I've
very
had to
beginning
do
of
it.
all of this, I took
I've
it to
had to do.
classic.
I've had to do the classic every time because it keeps trying to log me into the beta.
I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I just know every time I'm like, okay, I remember how to do this from last time. I go to YouTube, I log in, and then I'm like, okay, fuck, what the hell is all this shit? And then she can get me about 2 steps in, and then I have to call Jay, and he's like, okay, go here, then click here, then go here, then you need to do this, and then click. It's like, what? Why don't I just have a button that says go live? Why?
I don't know.
And where the fuck is Vendetta? God damn it. Fix your browser, nigger.
He can't hear you.
I know. I'm ranting to the fucking 7 people that are listening right now.
Why don't you tell them a story?
Why don't you send two links to the chat, Diz?
What?
The DM group, you sent 2 YouTube links back to back.
Oh, I don't know. It went in 2 times. It went 2 times.
All right, folks, this is how the sausage is made. Welcome to the behind the scenes. We're just shooting the shit until my boy Vendetta comes on. We're going to be talking about the Yang phenomenon that has split the alt-right and caused me to mute about 80 of you motherfuckers. And we're going to talk about the collapse of the Finnish government and a few other things from across the pond. Just bear with us until my friend Vendetta can get figured out how to get on here. Can't be any more complicated than fucking starting this piece of shit.
Did he send you his email?
Hmm?
Did he
Why
send
would I
you
need
his
his? No, I don't. Why would I need his email?
Because you can send him an invite differently than the
Well,
link that was put into the DM. I used to
well,
have some problems on mine as well because I couldn't get out of the Twitter app into the Hangout app. The link would not transfer from Twitter to the Hangout.
well, that's because you had the option checked deep in your Twitter settings to open links in the Twitter browser. Yeah, it can be a bit of a bitch.
Yeah, fiddle with your modem because you're breaking up.
Yeah, it's because I'm trying to do fucking Twitter
Well,
DMs and talk.
stop doing Twitter.
I'm trying to talk to Vendetta, that faggot. All right, I'm stepping away for a second to grab a phone charger for my modem.
Okay. Well, I don't really have anything to talk about with myself, but I guess I'll just talk a little bit. Hopefully we won't get too heated in our differing opinions about the Yang stuff.
Well,
That can be.
Vendetta seems to at least be willing to consider some things, which is why that was one of the topics I wanted to discuss. And he's the one who said he wanted to talk about this, so it's not like I'm being hostile.
Yeah, well, there are some rational opinions. I get the anger aspect of it. I'm not just super thrilled with anything that anybody's upset about either. It's just that you know,
Are you watching the Spurg chat right now, Diz?
our Spurg chat, our live
Yeah.
chat.
Yeah, because if you are, you're about to get really pissed.
Why? They want me on the Yang. They want me in their YangBang so bad, so bad. I think that's why they're so mean to me about it. It's not that they want me to shut up. It's that they want me in their club.
We can have our own private YangBang, dear.
Oh no.
Just me, you, Mistress, and Vendetta.
I'm not afraid to hit you on a live stream.
Oh.
Mistress says she's not afraid to punch me during a live stream.
I'm not afraid for her to punch you during a live stream.
Pink Hat Man bad.
Pink Hat Man bad.
Fuck that chink. How about them apples? Any of you who are actually being serious in the chat right now, your grandparents would be ashamed. That's right. I'll go full boomer, motherfucker. This isn't what we fought the Nazis for.
God. This is gonna. Man, you are a real boomer.
Me?
Yes, you're a real boomer.
Everyone is a boomer except me.
My grandparents.
Vendetta!
My grandparents didn't fight the Nazis for you to vote for a goddamn chink who offers you $1,000 a month. Jesus Christ, Vendetta.
Well,
God damn, dude. It sounds like you're in a freaking sandstorm in the desert.
yeah. Let me see. It's probably different settings.
You see what happens when you already support the Asian technocrat?
He's probably listening to us right now.
The Asian technocrat?
Yes, he's going, yes.
See,
I
Asian technocrat. My technology would actually work.
All right, now I can hear Vendetta, and it doesn't sound like he's on the fucking surface
Yeah,
of
the
the
fucking
planet
settings.
Arrakis.
Once
What's
again,
up?
always changing the inputs.
All right, we can get this thing started now that Vendetta is here. So, what is happening, my brother?
Nothing much. Are we actually on like live now?
Yes, we've been live for about 10 minutes waiting for your ass.
Oh, I see.
We've
How you
just
doing,
been
everybody?
we've just been
So,
sitting here talking back end stuff. We've got 9 viewers at the moment.
oh, I see. I thought we were still in the pre-show, whatever. Run on med time here, late as usual.
Well, at
Well,
least we didn't.
this is Doc's fault. Usually you do start in a hangout that's not live, but we didn't.
Everything
Well,
is fucked up, but it's okay. We'll move on.
at least Vendetta didn't come in swinging, calling us both by our real names or anything, you know?
Let's see. So yes, I was at the. I did have a chance to go see Andrew Yang live the other day because I found out there was an event he was doing that was giving away tickets for free. So I thought, why not? Let's go and see what he's like and what it's about. And it was a pretty small thing, about maybe a room of 50 people, and just a question and answer session. We was just taking questions from people and got about an hour to like get an impression of them. And I have to say, it comes off impressive as a personality, as in I think he's going to do very well in the, if he gets to the debates and he gets to kind of make an impression on a national audience like that. He comes off very smart, very likable, very kind of straightforward and down to earth. Like if people ask him questions, he doesn't sound like he's given kind of politician answers, and he doesn't try to dodge the questions. He answers pretty directly. So you'd say from a personality perspective, that's not going to be holding him back at all. And I think that he will do well. Now, obviously, there's lots of people with different opinions or reactions to him at this point. And I don't know exactly, we might get a bunch of people from different with different views listening to this, because some people will be, in the Yang Gang and very excited about him. Some people are kind of horrified that this is happening and have no idea why anybody would like him. Some people are kind of like the memes are fun, but are you guys really serious about this? And some people are still kind of behind the loop and like, when did everyone start hating Trump? And it was kind of funny because I took last week, pretty much I got sick and I started taking about a week off of Twitter, and I came back and it was like this whole, say it's like the stock market in a bubble just burst, and like Trump's stocks just crashed overnight. And suddenly, Yang's exploded into, the biggest, ongoing meme fad right now. And it was kind of funny for me just having missed whatever really started the collapse and just coming in right at the middle of it.
That's funny. I don't see any Yang memes on my TL.
You block them all.
That's correct. I block anyone who is pushing this fucking Chairman Mao bullshit. You will be blocked instantly. That includes my good friend Peter Teft, who I've been friends with for years. And it hurt me a lot when I had to hit that block button, but I did.
Do you have any plans of unblocking in a few weeks?
If people can find other avenues to contact me, Peter, for example, obviously has my phone number, and he can contact me through Skype. And they say, I was joking. I don't actually want you lined up against a wall and shot because you won't give up your tax money to pay my neat bucks. Then, yeah, I'll consider it.
Solid position. I'm angry, and And I'm scared, and I'm scared. It at first when we first questioned this, we were on John's show, and at that point it was just like a casual meme, and I was totally on board with the meme. I memed. The hat hadn't come out yet. There were a few bits of information. He had said something, I guess on Joe Rogan, uh, highlighting some problems that white people face, and that was pretty cool. It's got to be easier for a POC to be able to do something that we should be able to do for ourselves, and that's nice. But I've learned some things since then, and I can't, in good conscience, support something that could lead to the point that his platform goes to.
Well,
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me if it's fun. It's not fun, and it's especially not fun when you feel like without warning that everybody that you've been struggling with, Mein Kampf. This is our struggle, and everybody that you've struggled with all of a sudden left.
well,
It's a lot like being cheated on. That's what it feels like.
Just real quick, I want to throw something in. I first started talking about Yang like 5 weeks ago. Vendetta, was it on the show with you where we were talking about automation that I brought him up, or was it a different show?
That was correct. And at the time, I didn't know who it was.
Yeah,
but we did talk a good deal about the automation.
Yeah, I was the only one who had ever heard of this guy 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I only brought him up because he had been talking automation, and you and I were doing a podcast about automation and how to deal with the jobs that are going to be lost, the trucking industry, the simple manufacturing that was going to be lost. And I just said, did you hear about this Yang guy? And no one had heard of him. And I was fine with that. I just threw out a couple of his policy positions. And all of a sudden, within the last 4 days, all of Twitter is just Yang, 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 Yang. And I'm sick of it.
You did this. Oh my God, you're sick. So tell us some more. Tell us some more about the issues that Yang got into in his Q&A.
Sure thing. Well, the most part of it was spent on the automation topic, on UBI, and on the opioids and the general life expectancy, crisis we are having with lowering life expectancy from addictions and disease of the heart. And these are all issues that we've actually kind of taken an interest in before. And obviously the opioid thing is pretty related to just white interests in general. And part of what, attracted people to Yang is that he brought this topic up and he specifically addressed white people as a group with an issue that needs to be, addressed. And now in this Q&A, like the racial topic in general did not come up. What did not come up throughout this night was any sort of social progressive or social liberal SJW kind of talking points about privilege or racism or sexism or anything like that. Like, it's just a topic that he doesn't talk. There were a handful of attempts because his audience is mostly Democrats and liberals, so they were asking questions. The couple times that they tried to get him onto topics like that, it just wouldn't work. And there was one person who tried getting him onto like global warming, for example, and he brought up some point about how we could bring our emissions down to 0 and it would still not actually solve the problem because the rest of the world will pollute and stuff. And essentially kind of skimmed over it and said some things. I think he said things about like, real solutions would be like geoengineering or carbon capture, like technological sorts of solutions. But he pretty much got back to the $1,000 a month topic pretty quick. there was someone else who tried to get him to do some, will you pledge not to pardon anyone from the current administration who happens to go on trial afterward? Like pretty much, he didn't name Trump exactly, but like, will you pledge not to pardon Trump? Will we give him like, his, arrest him and send him to jail or whatever? And he was not cool with that question and pretty much said that's kind of a third world country thing that America doesn't do, is throwing the last leader in jail. And he said he wouldn't pledge to do that. Other things, what did we get him on? We managed to get a question on internet censorship out and what to do about deplatforming and censorship, because before that he'd answered a question about, somebody asked him about Elizabeth Warren's proposal to break up Facebook and stuff. And he said to that, basically, that doesn't actually really solve anything, because these platforms work because you pretty much have everyone on one social network. And, how do you break that up? Do you cut one half of the alphabet off from the other, or split the different functions in different apps? And the point is, if you split into smaller things, each of those smaller things can still just do the same things the larger one was doing. They can still continue to censor or abuse information in the same way. So we managed to ask him afterward about, and try to steer the topic onto censorship, deplatforming specifically. And he said, he gave us the answer that we've kind of been looking for, which is the regulation of these companies as by making them a common carrier public utility, like, your power company or your other telecoms, your phone services and stuff, where they're legally not allowed to discriminate against customers on the basis of politics or pretty much anything else aside from ability to pay.
Let me interject real quick here. Ironically enough, up until a month or so ago, Anthony Cumia, when he talked about making the Twitter, the social media networks be regulated like a utility, one of the examples Cumia would always bring up would be, if I go to the bank to do a wire transfer, they don't check my politics first. Guess what? Things have changed in the last month, haven't they?
Well, banks are not public utilities like that. They're not under this category. But more or less, the problem is that people's frustration is that we've been shouting at various blue checks, all of the big shots who might have access to the Trump administration. We've been, yelling for Trump himself, do something about this, and use your power while we still have it to actually try and control these companies, or else you're not going to have the power of social media on your side like you did in 2016 during your election. It's going to directly harm you. So at least help yourself. But they keep on giving an answer like, we are looking into that, and we are looking into censorship, and it is a problem, and we're looking into that. We're looking into that. And, it keeps on looking, but apparently nothing's being found, because it's just always, we'll do something about it. And nothing gets done on it. And the problem is if you have no answer really, and the other side kind of fills in the vacuum, and you get someone like Yang who comes in and says he has an answer for it, and it kind of makes you look dumb, and it makes you look like you don't really care, and that you're kind of not fighting like you should be. So of course it would be a major blow to the confidence in Trump that he's actually the one who's going to do this for you. Hopefully it might prompt him to stop looking for it and actually, the answer's pretty obvious and the answer's pretty clear. Let's do it.
I have a question from Nikki in response to when you said that Yang seems like could be impressionable. She wants to know, she thinks that is an even worse thing, that he can be
I don't know, I
impressionable.
misheard something. I said he made a good impression.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A good impression, not impressionable. Okay,
Yeah.
and also she had a concern about the economics of UBI and immigration, whether UBI would make us more desirable, and if the Yang plan for the border security would be adequate to protect us economically.
I don't know. I'm not really here to be Yang's campaign spokesman because my feelings are still kind of, a bit mixed on this, and I'm not quite sure what to think about where this is all going yet. But we can talk about UBI in general as a subject, and it kind of came up last time we were on here when we were talking about automation in the future and what are solutions to automation. We had a few different kinds of answers we threw out, and
well, here's my concern about Yang's position on automation, as per his platform, is that he acknowledges that AI and advanced technology is on its way. He acknowledges that it will cause job loss, but his solution is to create a new government, a new federal department with a cabinet and a secretary, base it in Silicon Valley, and attempt to possibly regulate as emerging technologies come out. His only solution for job loss is UBI, which when that's great because we just saw a clip today about a Walmart robot that is doing inventory, but and those are minimum wage jobs, but eventually it's going to be replacing people in not minimum wage jobs, and UBI at $12,000 a year isn't going to cover a lot of technical skilled people that can be replaced by automation.
I just want to interject here. One of the ice cold takes that I've seen the most on Twitter and that I've been willing to toe argue the most is, oh, well, Yang's going to fix the opioid epidemic by giving all these unemployed white people $1,000 a month of free cash. Let me tell you something. As a former...
You did get a question about this during the session. Yeah.
Just let me say, as a former cocaine addict and as someone whose older brother has been dying of opioid addiction since I was about 19 years old, the last thing you want to give to an addict is money. That is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life.
He did get that exact question from somebody who said, I'm a recovering alcoholic and I know a lot of people in rehab and stuff. And what would it not be enabling their problem? And honestly, I can't remember the whole answer he gave to this, and I probably couldn't do justice to it, but that is a question worth thinking about. His UBI proposal, to get back to it, what I recall is that he was asked about, because here's the thing, it's funny, like a lot of people in the right view this as, this is socialism, and it's kind of, it's a problem as that. Well, a lot of people, I also kind of keep track of what the left says, and a lot of the progressives are actually deeply suspicious as well of UBI, and they talk about how it's like a secret, libertarian capitalist plot to undermine the welfare state by trying to replace welfare as we know it with this UBI thing, and trying to the idea being that, you give everybody $1,000 and they're all excited about it because it sounds like a lot of money, but then you quietly withdraw all the other stuff you're getting from them. And they, if you look at some of the endorsements for UBI, a lot of them are like kind of libertarian think tank people will support this as well. And that gives the leftists like a, well, if these people support it, it must be bad kind of thing. So,
well, I actually discussed UBI on my podcast a year or more ago on those specific terms, which was suppose, I think, Yang wasn't around, but I said if someone proposed like a $1,200 a month universal basic income, but in doing so abolished SNAP, EBT, WIC, Medicare, Medicaid, all that is gone. And there's just the UBI, which I said $1,200 a month would be reasonable, then it would actually be a massive money saver, and it would massively shrink the government. If you just had a computer, printing out a check every month of $1,200 to everybody and got rid of this massive overhead of the welfare state, then I never liked the idea of free money, but it would be worthwhile to destroy their welfare state. But this is something that a lot of the people that I've been arguing with about Yang's stupid shit with is they're like, oh, well, you can't get you can't get the Yang bucks if you already are receiving $1,000 a month or more in benefits, unless you want to give up those benefits for the cash. And I say, yeah. And every minority, every dumbass who's currently getting free rent and free food, they're going to take the cash because most of them are dope heads, drug addicts, alcoholics. And then guess what? When they give up their rent assistance and their EBT to snatch the cash, they're going to blow the cash by the third day of the month. And then the liberals are going to be saying, oh, God, we have people out of homes. We have people starving. We have to give them welfare. And now we're going to have a bigger welfare state with a UBI on top of it, you dumb motherfuckers. Sorry.
Can I just interject quickly? When we talk about ending the welfare state, I would greatly appreciate if we looked into WIC, because what WIC does, in addition to providing some financial support to mothers who have just given birth and children under 3, is that it also price controls some items of basic importance at the grocery store, so that
Dairy
even
products.
Yeah, and in some places more than that. Bread, cheese, there's some meats that are WIC approved. I mean, go through your store and look at the pink signs. They're price controlled, and even if a woman isn't on WIC and is in a financial situation, or her husband's in the military overseas and he hasn't gotten paid yet, or there's a government shutdown, his check didn't come in, those things ensure that those mothers can feed themselves and their children under in a price controlled way. And I appreciate that. I don't necessarily need that. I mean, I hope that I never need to utilize that situation, but it does make me feel good to know that, because I know the poverty rates of white people, that there is some sort of assistance, even if they didn't qualify for assistance. So I would like to leave WIC in place of social programs. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me, but I do feel pretty firmly about that as a specific social program.
That's part of where theory
with the caveat,
can...
real quick, with the caveat that I put in front of any time I talk about stuff like this, WIC is a great idea with the caveat in an ethno state. Right now, WIC is mainly going to pay for Nogs and Spics to reproduce and feed their kids off of my dime. In an ethno state, I think WIC is awesome, because even if you're a two-parent household where both parents are making minimum wage, thanks to WIC, you would be able to give your kid good milk, formula, etc. But in our current society, it's literally just another system where the whites are milked to pay for the lesser beings.
Well, in some situations, WIC is all that somebody qualifies for. If somebody qualifies for food stamps in addition to WIC, that's where you're getting your NIGs and NOGs. If somebody qualifies for WIC, it could just be a white woman with a baby. All women qualify for WIC.
I have a kid, and we used WIC. I'm very familiar with the program.
Well, there you go. That's all I'm saying.
I was 21, and the mother was 16, and yeah, it was a bit of a tough time, and WIC did help a lot. I might have been living on ramen noodles, but the kid had all he needed.
Right, that's all I'm saying. Kids don't ask to be here, and it helps you till they're 3 years old. After that, you're on your own. And I don't. Anyway, Vendetta had something to say. I don't want to keep going on about it.
In general, there's where kind of theory meets reality, and where in theory it is good. It may sound good to just let's cut this all down, the welfare state. In reality, the welfare state's going incredibly complicated, and there are parts of it that are solidly beneficial that you want to keep. And that's actually something you have to go in more detail through and see what parts are worth cutting, what parts are not, and kind of modify it. But to view this on an ethnic level, like you are saying before, one of the interesting questions to ask is who really would benefit most from UBI right now if UBI does not go to anybody who's already claiming over $1,000 in benefits. That means by default, it's not going to go out and benefit Blacks and Hispanics. Right now, most people who are not on welfare like that would be white people. So it's curious about really the part you want to figure out is who's going to end up paying the most with the VAT tax, because who's going to be funding it. And if it's people who essentially you have to do, if you do the math and like suppose that somebody's buying things that only, that kind of splits sales tax way up the chain to different stages of producer and buyer and retailer and the consumer at the end. But let's just pretend that, somehow all of it, you're buying only stuff that you're paying all the VAT for. So VAT would be 10%, means you would have to spend $10,000 a month to not get back more than you paid for it. The average person spend that much in their daily life, because in practice it'd probably be more like, you're spending $50,000 a month in order to not get your money's worth back out of this. Does the average person actually end up losing in that situation or no?
I wanted to piggyback off of something you just said, Vendetta, with a little anecdote. And of course, the plural of anecdote is not data, but I knew two guys who worked for a sawmill in South Alabama. They were both their primary breadwinners in their household. They both had two kids. They were both the same age. One was white, one was black. The sawmill got shut down. My friend Jesse went to try to get on food benefits and stuff like that so that his kids could eat until he found another job. He got turned down. They said that he had made too much in this fiscal year. The black guy who had been working right beside him on the same machine for the same amount of time, making the same amount of money, immediately got like $1,600 a month in benefits when he got laid off. Kind of just food for thought.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the odds that this program would be any different once it's implemented and goes into the hands of social workers?
Well, the whole kind of appeal on paper of UBI is it cuts out the social workers, because with you do a welfare office, you hire a bunch of DMV people to run it. We all know who DMV people are, and it creates a whole department of Democratic people who are going to be running the program, and it gives them more power because it gives them more jobs in the government and more of that. But as you said before, if you have UPI and it's just pretty much an automated process of writing a check out to everyone, there's not a whole lot of new jobs that come with that in administering it. Of course, it could always, nothing necessarily survives the, plan on paper to the implemented reality stage. It often doesn't. So, I mean, fair enough chance that this wouldn't either. But it's kind of interesting. Whole thing with Yang is, I think we have to move a bit past deciding whether we like Yang or we hate Yang, or trying to just, debate right now, like, should we vote for Yang or not? Part of it is trying to figure out, like, what should the right's answer be to the questions that Yang is bringing up. And if Yang's UBI program isn't satisfactory, like, what would the right's answer to the same question that the UB2 answer in Yang's proposal, what would our answer to that be?
Well, I can interject right there. And this is something I was talking to Ash from Republic Standard about yesterday morning, is one thing that unemployed white people who have lost their job to automation or to offshoring or to importing immigrants, the last thing they need is free money. It's an old saying, if you tell a Democrat he has to work, he'll sue you. If you tell a right-winger he can't work, he'll blow his brains out. And that $1,000 a month to a white man who has lost his sense of purpose, who feels like he's worthless to his family and his community because he wants to work, but his hands are idle, giving him free money is just like sticking the heroin needle straight into his veins. And I can testify to this. I was unemployed once. And during the time that I was unemployed, luckily, I had a newborn son to deal with, because otherwise I would have probably just woke up, took some methadone, started snorting cocaine, and done it until I passed out, and done it until my next unemployment check came in. So I know what it's like to feel like you have no purpose. And then for the government to give you free money for alcohol and tobacco and opiates and cocaine, that's a horrible combination. So as a right-winger, my approach to this would be, if the government's going to give unemployed white people money, they have to earn it. They have to spend 8 hours a day cleaning up national parks, picking trash up out of the river, and beautification projects, planting trees on the sides of our highways. If we're going to have 3 to 5 million unemployed white people, which is the projection in the next 5 years due to automation, if there's that many unemployed people, there's no reason for there to be a scrap of garbage laying on the ground anywhere in this country. How about that?
I mean, work for welfare is a concept I've generally supported in the past. And the problem in that situation, if you're describing it, is if the welfare state kind of persists as it is, then basically you get a situation where black people get their, free everything and just, fuck off and do what you want with it. And then white people, it's like, you're going to be, you're going to be the work slave cleaning up outside and digging holes in the ground for your $1,000. So the solution, I think, involving that would have to be existing welfare programs being transferred over to that model, where if you want to claim that kind of welfare, then there's pretty much a federal make work job attached. And I don't know, maybe then UBI on top of that, or side that.
Well, okay, so there's a couple different kinds of programs that exist. And I don't know if these are state or federal, but I know that in my area they have temporary assistance, which is called TANF, TANF, and it's a limited amount of time, and it helps with rent, utilities, and food. And I don't have a problem with temporary assistance programs because people do have life just fuck them up the ass sometimes. It just happens. It happens across all kinds of racial boundaries. I mean, we shouldn't have to worry about other races, but we're not at a point where we just can't, because it's any policy that we put forth in the current year and the current era and the way that our country is has to include them in some capacity. Now, we should be making decisions that are best for white people, but we can't not include other races that exist in our current situation. I would love to, but it would be pretty difficult to get that passed on any kind of federal level, state level, local level even. We need more charities. Can have white only charities. It would probably be frowned upon. It would probably be judged. It might be labeled a hate group by the SPLC. I don't know. But we can do that. And also, the reason the reason why we're hearing these issues from Yang is because we're not running candidates. We're not running candidates.
I can promise you that there are things in the works to fix that issue, Diz.
Yeah.
Good. Well, there should be. There always should be.
Can do in general is for people facing situations is you set up programs or benefits that would implicitly favor white people. For example, if you do any sort of child assistance programs that give the most benefits to married families, well, you look at which rates, which groups have the highest rates of marriage and which don't. And
that would be the exact opposite of our current dysgenic systems.
Yes,
whereupon a single mother gets more benefits if the father is not in the house. If the father has a job and he is in the house, that cuts mama's benefits, which is pretty much what has destroyed the black nuclear family, which used to have a smaller rate of out of wedlock birth than the white family.
Thing is that whites would get most of the benefits, but it would also encourage more less dysfunctional behavior from minorities, and would probably be good for them too in the long run to trying to equalize and make black and whites society function at the same level is generally it's never worked, but and they can be doing a lot better than they are now, or they can at least reach the more historical, they had higher historical levels of just basic family function. And
they did better under Jim Crow than they've ever done since, because they had to create their own economies because they weren't allowed access to ours.
And in general, I think that that's part of why the Hotep movement was always appealing, and kind of hoped it would go somewhere, because it's the idea, just pride in actually having something that's your own, that you built by yourself. And I think that's largely the problem. The reason blacks are so angry at society right now is that society has been forcibly integrated, but unless they get this free boost, they won't be performing equally, or they won't be like the winners in it. And even if they get that free boost, then it still feels fake and hollow that these achievements they're getting, and then they're not ending up happy.
I know there's, because I'm so pissed about Yang, I've just been paying more attention to Tariq Nasheed, which I pay attention to him a little bit because I want to know who's calling white supremacists. And also I really like that he does not like Kamala Harris. But he was talking about reparations today, because AOC had an interview with somebody, and he was talking about how they just talk around the issue. And I'm not really sure, if they talk about reparations, I don't know if there's even been any demands issued, or like expectations or suggestions. Um, because there's a difference between, like, even with Yang, there was Elon Musk who had an interview with somebody about UBI, very interesting. Um, and then there's Andrew Yang who put a value on it. So there's theoretical solutions, and then there's uh, what Tariq Nasheed refers to as tangibles. So Yang offered a tangible. I'm disappointed that it was Yang. I'm disappointed that it wasn't Elon Musk. I'm disappointed that it wasn't a different white candidate. Um, it is disappointing and disheartening that our own people that have the reach and the power in order to change something refuse to even acknowledge that there needs to be a change in that direction.
Well,
I,
Elon is exactly the type of person who would agree with what I mentioned earlier about if you got laid off from your factory job, free money isn't the solution. Elon is the type of visionary who would say, hey, I'm building an underground tunnel from LA to New York that's going to run on nuclear maglev power. Why don't you come help us dig it?
Well, Elon is the one who runs robot factories, and I've looked into the problems with Tesla recently. And Tesla's got so many problems as a company, but one of them was the fact that Elon Musk wanted an entirely robotic factory. He had this whole, futuristic vision of no workers in it. And now there are parts of the automobile assembly process that are still pretty much more efficiently done by hand. Like a few parts of a few stages of the process, but he and all the people who are regular experts in the car business would say, no, you can't really use robots. That's just not going to be efficient and stuff. And he would not be persuaded otherwise. He wanted to be the most futuristic or whatever. And so he created this assembly line that's actually, costing him money at parts of it because he's pushing too hard for automation, but for it's, they're even ready to have it.
All right. This brings me to a topic that's worth discussing. If I were Elon Musk, if I was the owner of any sort of manufacturing business, whether it be plywood manufacturing or whether it be vehicle manufacturing or making microchips, I would, of course, be looking to maximize my profits and minimize my overhead. And the easiest way to do that would be to automate. And since my job is automation, it's what I do. Instrumentation, PLC, distributed control systems, that's what I do. It is so much more logical to use machines. And not just because of your regular human error issues, but also because this generation, which I'll say the people from the ages of about 18 to now about 35, are pathetic. I regularly work up to 96, 100 hours a week. I've not called in sick for as long as I can remember as an adult. But at a factory that I'm at, if you're supposed to have 12 men on each shift, you can count on 9 or 10 because somebody's going to call in sick. Somebody every shift is going to say, oh, well, my water heater went out and I've got 2 inches of water in my house and I got to deal with that. Or my mama's sick. My aunt has to go to the hospital. My sister's sick, or I got to watch my brother's kids. There's always an excuse why this generation can't make it to work. Whereas the older guys, they have parking spots for 20 years of perfect attendance, never missed a day. And I have almost 10 years, never missed a day. And just having to deal as a supervisor with knowing that almost every day someone reporting to you is going to make up some excuse to call in and not come to work, and then you're going to have to call someone else. It's their day off, and you're going to have to call them and say, hey, I need you to come in and cover dipshit's shift because his sister's mama's sick or his sister's kids are sick or what the fuck ever, is annoying as fuck. And I would replace these pieces of shit with machines in a second if I could. Sorry, just saying there is an issue.
There is an issue, and it's... You want to go on? A couple of things. I mean, one, it's probably... There's obviously a bit of a character... There's just a character issue because this generation was coddled and raised soft, and this is the... that's certainly an issue. I think also there's an issue I can spot in like your examples with, this generation doesn't get married. And if they are married, their wife's working somewhere else. So you don't have a wife at home to go and take care of your sick mother or your sick cousin or whatever, or babysit the kids from someone else. And, the older generations, you would have had a wife at home to pretty much deal with problems in the house like that. And you'd have gone to work. And now you're down to one person, or and if you're going to work, then your home is falling apart, or you've got your wife, but she's equally busy as you are, and so neither you can actually take care of those problems. So it's multiple sources of the issue there.
That's an issue that we've talked about on the right for a long time that has been misconstrued. Is that that's the regressive part of our society. When scarcity was common, it absolutely made sense for both men and women to work at whatever it was, whether it was work in the same business, say a blacksmith and his bookkeeper, or if it's a farm, then everybody works on the farm. If it's some other type of business, then if the assistance was needed, then it was needed, and it just was because it was coping with scarcity. But here we are in an era of luxury, of status is determined by how much time that you have to not work. And we're still behaving as if we're in a time of scarcity when we're not. We're in a time of abundance. And that's not true for everybody. And it's never going to be true for everybody, because there are barriers. There's educational barriers. People who drop out of high school, there's a consequence for that. People who don't go to technical school, there's a consequence for that. I know that we criticize college, but at one point it wasn't a liberal hotbed. It was a place where you got an education, and it wasn't even that long ago. But people who didn't get educated post high school, there's a consequence for that, and it is that you don't make any more money. There's a cap to, yeah.
Did you see that picture that was shared on Twitter about a week ago? Someone had bought a book at a used bookstore and found inside of it that had been used as a bookmark the receipt from a semester at the University of Houston. And the total for the semester, it was from like 1974, and the total for the semester was like $870. That was books, tuition, and parking. This is why people of the older generation have this mindset like, well, I put myself through college, working night shift as a janitor, and raised 2 kids. And it's like, yeah, it's a little bit different now there, Gramps.
It is.
Yeah, it is. But it also, if you choose to not do it and you're in an industry where it would benefit you, you're impeding your ability to make money.
Well, it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. Because if you don't, you end up, chance that you'll end up in like dead-end jobs the rest of your life. If you do, chance that you end up a debt slave for the prime years of your life, and you won't be taking girls out, and you won't be getting married because nobody wants to date somebody who's broke.
Well, it's kind of a joke, but um, I would tell my younger cousins and my son in the next couple years, he'll be getting a driver's license and be in the dating scene. And there's not much you can do at that point. But once he's an adult, which, dear Lord, isn't that long from now, and he says, Dad, what do I look for in a woman? I'm going to say, well, if you want to get serious, check her fucking credit score. And that sounds crazy and materialistic, but I know guys who got married because the chick was hot and sweet, and then found out after they got married that the chick has a 300 credit score because she's got $90,000 in bad credit card debt and student loan debt. And it's bad out there is all I'm saying. It's not like it used to be. Vendetta, I'm sure you can speak on that.
Well, to come back to Yang, actually, one of his third points, because he has got his major points, his other major point is this idea of human-centered capitalism, which didn't elaborate in great detail at the thing I went to, but did speak a bit about it. And it's sort of what people are comparing to like the Chinese social credit system or whatever. And another thing to be kind of interested in, because if you look at the basic points that it's premised on, it's that, you know, capitalism is a system that's valuing money over people right now. And that's often a point, like in our own discussions on the right, we've made that, you know, the capitalism is part, you know, the source of immigration problems is that they will value the money or the GDP over the welfare of the nation and the people who live here. And as a general concept, you know, how do you solve the shortcomings of capitalism without, you know, creating a communist society that nobody wants to live in? And so Yang's solutions, I'm not sure that they're the right ones or that they work, but that's another area where he's bringing up like a question that needs to be answered, which Trump and his people kind of touched on the outlines of it a bit with their thing about revising trade deals to like, okay, let's dial it back on the free trade because it turns out it's not really helping people. And let's, you know, yeah, he talked about like, let's get businesses hiring citizens again. But in practice, we're seeing that it's not turning out as well as we hoped. Bottom line is though, some sort of idea like that the right does need to have an idea of how do we basically look out for people and stop letting market forces destroy us when there's money to be made doing that.
Let me interject right here. Diz, sorry to cut you off. I want to call out every fucking hypocrite in the alt-right who is pushing this free money Yang bullshit. I want to call you out on one thing because I had an argument with someone with a stupid, ugly pink hat on the other night. And they say, oh, well, this generation's got problems, so give me them Yang bucks. And I say, this just means that since I make six figures, you're going to take more from me because you're fucking greedy. And they're like, oh, well, this is why whites are never going to succeed. We're not willing to communize and form collectives while all the other races are. Here's why I say you're fucking hypocrites. There's a regular meme that goes around the alt-right, which is diversity. An idea so good, you have to enforce it at the end of a gun. Well, how about collectivism and redistribution? An idea so good that you're going to have to point a gun at my fucking head if you want my money. What's the difference, you hypocritical piece of shit?
Well, I would say the part of the whole deal with redistribution is deciding where exactly is the cutoff point where, you know, these are going to be the people benefiting and these are the people going to be paying for it. And if you set it in the hundreds of thousands, it's actually, it's gonna hurt white people making $100,000 to $300,000 a year. If you set it up toward the, if you're making like multimillionaires and billionaires paying for it, it turns out you're actually pretty much implicitly taxing the Jews, who are overwhelmingly represented at the upper income sections of it. So if we were devising the ideal alt-right sort of UBI system, you would want it to be a system basically where the benefits mostly go to white people and you find a way to tax Jews for most of it.
I mean, that's a good theory. I mean, that's theoretically, that'd be great. It would be better if there weren't any Jews to tax, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. But
when life gives you lemons,
back,
make lemonade. So if life gives us Jewish billionaires, let's make it rain a bit.
Yeah, we do need to stop defending billionaires. We have a lot of white billionaires, but we have a disproportionate percentage of Jews who are billionaires.
Most white billionaires at this point are traders. They're traders who have, sold out every, they pay no attention to white people below them and, sell us out and stick the knife in our backs every chance they get. So I don't feel we owe them any sort of defense right now.
History of nobility and what's the word?
Noblesse oblige, right?
Our bourgeois. We've always had a classist thing going on. I don't really begrudge the wealthy for wanting to be with the wealthy and not having that much vested interest in digging around in the dirt. It would be nice if there were more personal touches and not just donating buckets of money to charities for tax breaks. It would be better if it came from the heart and because they cared and were glad that they got where they got to and wanted to help other people. But I do want to touch on Yang's human-centered capitalism and how the question about the Chinese style social credit system keeps coming up in that conversation. I believe it's because on his platform it's in that conversation. But Yang's it's digital social credit. It's reward how you behave online and how you communicate. It is related to speech and hate speech. And it's also related to a few points that he has in his platform, which there's 2 bids to control journalism. One of them is through a massive fellowship where each state would have as many fellows as they do Congress people. So like Wyoming would have 3, California would have 55. So all the states would have their fellows. They would be chosen amongst their peers in their states. And then a quarter of those would be given a 4-year fellowship grant of $400,000. And I do believe it's annually. So it would be a new 400. It would be a new quarter of 532, whatever, how many house people there are. So a quarter of those 400,000. We Jay and I did the math on my show that I had the other day. Probably annually, but it doesn't specify. So best case scenario, it's every 4 years. This multi-billion-dollar project would happen, or it would be annually. And the other journalism play for power is at a local level, and I don't specifically remember the details of that, except that it was to control like local publications, make sure they don't go out of business, make sure they're saying the right things to stay in business. But also to not run with sensationalism so much. So I mean, it sounds good on paper. A lot of things sound good on paper. Communism sounds great on paper. That's why so many people go through it or go through like a communist phase, is because they talk about it in college and it sounds great on paper. In practice, it's terrible. And then finally, he wants to create a federal department, another federal department. Its platform is full of new federal departments with new secretaries of whatever. This particular one is the ombudsman, whose job it is to fact check the internet and to steer news in the direction of what the federal government considers to be truth.
I'll interject right here real quick. This is the problem with putting any sort of faith in an Asian for leadership in a white country. We as white people, we are individualists. We conquered every frontier on Earth, including space, the moon at least. When we got to the shores of North America, we didn't say it's nice here on the coast. We pushed and we pushed and we pushed until we came to another ocean. And then we decided to go south and fight the fucking Aztecs, Incans, Mayas, Mexicans. Everywhere we went, we said, this is not enough. We can get more. We can go farther. And that individual rugged spirit of white people is what I say will be crushed under this free money system, which is exactly what crushed the black family, as we've brought up a few times during this show. So I want to give another anecdote. And again, the plural of anecdote is not data, but I have a guy that I met through Twitter who's up in Michigan. Shout out Caleb, if you're going to listen to this. Young guy, he's like 19, 20 years old. And he wanted to get into the trades. And someone recommended that he talk to me about it. So for the last year or so, I've been helping him get some ins with the electrical union up there in Michigan. And he's kind of been seeing me as a big brother. And when all this YangBang shit started going down on Twitter in the last 4 days, last night or the night before, he DM'd me and he was like, hey, man, I just want to let you know that I was starting to get behind this YangBang stuff because it sounded good, because I work in a shitty town that used to survive because of the auto industry, and the auto industry's gone. And I was thinking that it was a good idea, but you turned me around when I saw you fighting against it, because I want to be you. I want to become an electrician and make $150,000 a year. And when I am you, I don't want them to come and take my money to give it to other people. So thank you so much for helping me see why this is so fucked up. And that's the mentality that white people should have. When we see a millionaire, we should not say, oh, he's got more than me, let's tear him down so I can have more money. We should say, I'm going to aspire to that. Who came up with, Superman? The idea of the Ubermensch, white people, the idea of being the best human possible, stronger, faster, smarter. That is what whites should aspire to, not trying to be parasites who steal from those who are stronger, faster, and smarter. That is what makes me and Dizzy so fucking angry. And you all call us boomers because we're so against being robbed to give our hard-earned wealth to those who don't deserve it. You can call me a boomer all you want. I started out in my trade digging ditches in 115-degree South Alabama heat for $7 an hour and worked my way up to making $40 an hour as an automation specialist. And then I see people, I've even had friends, one of my best friends was looking for work. And I said, dude, I can get you a job starting out at $14 an hour in operations at this factory. $14 an hour is good money. And he responds, manual labor? That's not really my thing, man. I appreciate the offer, but, I'm not into working with my hands. And that's what pisses me off. And that's why I don't want my money to go to a motherfucker who says, manual labor isn't my thing, so you just keep busting your ass and I'll just take your money. Fuck you. Also, shout out Zyklon. Good to see you.
Well, here's part of the thing is that the class war, debates and the socialism versus capitalism kind of struggle of ideas originated in what were pretty much white ethno-states, where you would not have a racial component to this or an ethnic component to this, and it would be, are you the haves or the have-nots, basically, or it would be, what we'd think of as traditional like arguments of capitalism against socialism. Now we are not in that. We are in a multi-ethnic society where ethnicity has basically become a caste system that determines where your place is going to be in the hierarchy of the country. And Jews have pretty much come to dominate like the upper. So now they kind of take advantage of, it's not a coincidence that people like Ben Shapiro are the ones defending, capitalism will solve everything and blah, blah, blah. And like there's no absolute problem that capitalism can't solve because it's a system that works pretty well for them. And now they get to be the ones that say, you don't like the fact that, Jews control all the wealth in society. Well, do better, and it's a rigged game because, they've got like all the shortcuts to the top and we don't. So now the same kind of arguments benefit them in sort of a divide and conquer way, because basically it's how, do we set wealthier, whites against poorer ones. And we do that by creating this, socialist system based around, we'll start the taxes out at like the lower hundreds of thousands so that it'll be a lot of white people caught up in them. And that way we'll have white people defending us and our wealth. And what's funny is people kind of like the DSA sort of people, like Alexandria Cortez and Ilhan Omar and them, they're not really in good standing at all with the powers that be in the system. They're kind of, they can't quite just crush these people and get rid of them because, that's what the millennial Democrat sees himself as, like those are the people that represent them. And so you can't just say, screw you to all young people and like, we're going to kill, your heroes here. But they obviously don't like them. That's because they're people who've actually seriously started believing in total socialism, which would involve, let's go after the billionaires and the bankers and people like that. The Democrats, the moderate Democrats, are like, whoa, okay, calm down a bit, And Hillary would do her thing defending, like, would breaking up the big banks solve sexism or homophobia or whatever crap? No, because that's why they don't want to do that, because if you focus it just on billionaires and just on people who are, because no billionaire is a billionaire because he worked with his hands or anything, or he did any, like honest labor. Like you don't make $1 billion doing that kind of job. If you focus it just on them, it would disproportionately target, the people at the top of the system. It would target Jewish people especially. So that's why they're, Cortez people are not quite in good standing with them.
let me interject right here real quick. This whole no one who's a billionaire ever did anything,
No, they might
etc.
have started out doing that way. They didn't make $1 billion by.
Oh yeah, yes, you are for the most part correct, but that's a dangerous mindset. But I don't know if anyone here has been around long enough to remember Hank Reardon, who was my first co-host. Well, my second co-host years ago. People joked that he's the guy who wrote Mein Kampf through tweets in a matter of weeks as he got red pilled. But he would always say about the Jews, certain things you will not find Jews doing is extracting minerals from the ground or bringing forth food from the ground. You will not find them refining the ore from the ground or quarrying the stone from the rock. You will always find them making their money when someone else does this work and then wants to trade that to someone else, or when someone wants to borrow money to start a quarry, to start carving marble. There you will find the Jew.
And this is a lot of my problem with the value added tax as well. I think that it's predatory. Because it's to the seller. It's so the ore, the miner or whatever, the lowest value of a commodity can have gets taxed, and then it gets taxed, and then it gets taxed, and then it gets taxed anytime somebody creates something. So you've got hobbyists being responsible for UBI because they've sold a wreath on eBay.
It would be, part of the problem here is that Yang's pretty much got a platform that says there will be 10%, VAT, and there's not really like a finely detailed plan because every industrialized country pretty much has a VAT. Like the United States is unusual in that we don't have it. Every country in Europe has it, and Japan has it, and all these places have it. So it's not obvious. It's obviously not something that's completely unworkable, but there is like fine print to read through. Like you would actually, because I looked into this, and there are countries where, for example, they write in exceptions for various things, or like these things are exempt from UBI. And one of them is like your house. Like if you make improvements to your house, suddenly you've raised your house's value, so you would get that tax. Well, there's countries that, make exemptions for homeowners to, fix things up around their house or like, repaint their house or whatever. But there's also a few countries where they didn't go and do that. And actually it turns out people then are financially incentivized to neglect their homes, and like they don't build new houses anymore, or they don't renovate at all. So there is, we would have to see the fine print of whatever plan Yang or whoever would actually come up with for a VAT, and make sure that it's sort of sensibly written and it would not be penalizing these, these sorts of activities.
There was a proto version of what would be in the same category. It wasn't called that, but it was in the ACA. It was a huge point of contention because in order to pay for the ACA, they had to figure out ways to tax people. And one of the ways that they figured out that they could tax people in this bill was on the sale of your home. Should you choose to sell your home? And of course, that went into effect after the housing bubble crashed, and then began to come back with a vengeance. So this tax to pay for the ACA, or to partially pay for the ACA, went into effect as people were beginning to buy and sell houses again. Trump was not able to repeal the ACA. It is true. Republicans drag their feet. A lot of that has to do with them, because with some policies, you want it to go through the long process of the Congress and Senate, and that is because it's harder to do an executive order to get rid of those. Obama did a lot of executive orders, which is why a lot of his policies were so easy to get rid of, and were gotten rid of really early on. We forget to kind of credit Trump with those when we're being all disappointed and mad. But he did get rid of a lot of Obama era fuck ups that were really screwing with us individually, and that's one of them. That they did take a lot of stuff out of the ACA and the tax to home sellers, which would be you if you sold a home. And remember, the property is something that not everybody gets to have, but the individuals that do get to have it deserve the value of it, whether it be inherited or whether it be bought and paid for. So much of our shit in this country is owned by corporations and owned by rich people who do predatory things to us as renters, as whatever. I mean, ask any New Yorker about how landlords are. We suffer a lot of predation, and so the VAT tax being put on homeowners, individual homeowners, I don't think it's right. If they want to do the corporations like Lockheed or whatever, I mean, they're ultimately going to pass that on to like the value of the home, overvalue the house or whatever. But there's problems. There's problems in it. In a lot of what Yang says sounds good and sounds good on paper, sounds good in speeches.
Real
But
quick, Kara E. No, even in that case, we would not be able to afford a UBI, and we actually can't even afford Social Security. And that's one of the reasons why even the right-wing older generation refuses to stand up against our immigration issue, is because property values and our Social Security system requires a larger and larger and larger consumer tax base year after year to support it. So no, even if we stop giving money to the Jews and the mud people, we still can't even afford our current welfare system, much less a UBI on top of our current welfare system. Thanks for the question, Kara.
I mean, it's all pretty strange, honestly. You know, with the debt the way it is, where it's kind of this level of, can anyone imagine that we're ever actually going to pay off $20 trillion?
no, it's absurd.
No, it's never going to. It's not. It's unpayable. So at a certain point, like this country,
we could inflate our way out of it. It would suck a big.
If you want to be Venezuela, which is what you try to do, print your way out of financial crisis.
It would suck a big dick for anyone who's living on a fixed income or anyone who's living off their savings. My income gets adjusted every year for cost of living. This year I got a 2.7% cost of living. Anyway, my income's adjusted for cost of living, but anyone who is living on a fixed income or living off their savings, you would literally inflate all their money to be worthless. We all know the examples of Weimar Germany. With carrying wheelbarrows of cash, your entire life savings to buy a loaf of bread. But that is one option to deal with the $22 trillion national debt, is to print our way out of it. And there's another option, which is, of course, go to war. Because the only time American citizens are willing to accept austerity has been during World War I and World War II. That's when they're suddenly like, we've got to tighten our belts and we need to grow a garden in the backyard and start buying less food and send all the sugar and coffee and butter to the front lines to support the troops. That's when we'll suddenly accept having the belt tightened. So that's your two options. You can inflate your way out or you can war your way out. But as far as paying it back in a first world manner, that's not an option.
Yeah,
well, any president who tried the first option would have to fly on a plane out of here before he got lynched in the street. Pretty much, if you destroyed the currency like that overnight, you would go to 0% approval in like snapping your fingers.
Oh yeah, look at what happened to Hoover, who wasn't even responsible for it, but man, he gets blamed in history for it. Um, the funny thing about nations having debt is like who is the debt owed to? In a lot of ways, it's owed to people who owe us money, other nations.
That's part
They
of why
solved
Europe is
this.
so screwed up.
Yeah,
They
no
all loan
kidding.
to each other, so that's why it's like dominoes. If one country goes down, they all will. That's why they're so worried about like the Greek bailout and if Italy or if Spain or somebody else did the same thing, and because they all owe each other
Oh,
hundreds of billions.
yeah, but ultimately they could cancel each other's debts out. Just nobody is. Nobody is. Nobody's saying, "Okay, Greece, I owe you, you know, 16 trillion, you owe me 14 trillion. Let's just cancel each other's trillions out until we get to a normal amount of trillion." No, they're just leaving it as exactly what is owed. So, like, we owe China money, China owes us money. We owe the UK money, the UK owes us money. Israel probably doesn't owe us any money because we just give them shit. But I mean that is one solution that our countries, I don't even know. Do they even talk about it? I don't know. They don't invite me. If they
Well,
did,
at the
I would
point,
ask them.
it's almost like the debt used to be in the 90s. Like the debt was a serious issue. Like Ross Perot almost ran in the national debt being like the centerpiece of his platform. Nowadays, we have so many other problems and things are so screwed up. Like, for example, people were like, well, Trump, won't spending all this money on the wall and like lowering taxes and stuff, won't yours raise the national debt? And people are like, who freaking cares about the national debt at this point? If it's whether we get that wall or not, whether we get like, immigration back under control, that it would, really matter. You worry about the debt after country's not, bleeding out and at risk of takeover and doom. But to get back, I guess, to finish up with Yang, one of his last points, because he has his three major points, is the third thing we sort of started on, which was, healthcare when we brought up ACA, and how his is pretty much a standard, Democrat at this point, Medicare for all kind of thing. And part of the things the Republicans, as we covered, failed completely to do is, we never repealed and replaced Obamacare. And that's because Republican healthcare plans in general suck or just don't exist. They spent all these years complaining about it, but they don't actually, when it's like, okay, what do you have up your sleeve? What's your solution to this? It turns out they don't have one. And going back to what we had before is not really a great option either, because what we had before Obamacare was not really working great either. And then Obamacare just piled up even more problems onto it. And so we got this, essential problem that, other countries have like functional majority of citizens can afford, to pay their bills basically. It doesn't like crush them with debt. And it does that for way too many people here. And we have to figure out basically like, if this Democrat Medicare for all plan isn't going to work, Republicans need to not just say that's socialism, we can't do that. We need to say we're not going to do that because here's our better idea. And we still like, I can't really find like anybody, big on our side who's actually come out and said, this is my full plan for how the healthcare system will work, that will actually work. So curious if what thoughts we have about that.
I didn't know that we were submitting things to each other. I have a lot of plans for a lot of things. Where do I submit these?
I don't know. Just put them out there. Because, I mean, there are things I've seen, like individual bits and pieces that are like, Trump actually has a good idea about like removing interstate barriers to increase competition and lower the cost of plans. And he had other things about like life-saving medicine. He actually passed one that was relatively recent about like, it's like people always, I'm fucking dying here. Can I get an experimental, can I just try the experimental drug and see if it does anything to me? And they're like, no, it's not approved for the human tests. And he did something where it was the right to try thing that looked really good. But, Trump himself did a poor job of promoting his accomplishment there.
That brings me to another point, which is why me and Dizzy keep getting called boomers because we're not big fans of socialism. But who remembers last year when there was a baby in the UK who was dying of some sort of disease, and the UK's NHS system, which is taxpayer funded and government run, central planning, and that is the fear. Central fucking planning is the issue. And they said, your baby is a waste of taxpayer money. We're not going to help it. Italy said, bring the baby here. We will try. Private firms in the U.S., people in the U.S. raised millions of dollars, and there was an airplane on a runway outside of that hospital ready to take that baby to the United States. And the NHS, the National Health System in Britain, refused to let the US or Italy take that baby and try to save its life. Why? Because if our socialized healthcare can't save this baby, you're not allowed to.
Yeah,
it's
that
just
was
like what happened. It's just like what happens in North Korea. We could try to send millions of pounds of food every month to try to feed the people in North Korea. Kim Jong-un will not allow it. Why? Because that would mean that their God, their central planner, has failed. And so he won't allow it. That's the same with everything, just like Venezuela. When the government becomes your God, when your entire system is central planning and your daddy government, your daddy state, that's what you get. It was a meme 10 years ago, death panels. Now we have seen death panels up close and personal. We watched a child die while people were willing to spend millions to keep that child alive because the Central Planning Agency wouldn't allow it. And now tell me that I'm a boomer because I don't want socialism.
That was bizarre and absurd. And it was just a case. I really, I've never really liked the English much. And I've always just kind of had a anti-British prejudice, just irrationally, probably because I'm like part Irish. But just that island it's a fucking disgrace now. And you just see all these bizarre, just defying all logic things that their government does there now. Deeply, despise that place in the system. Obviously, the problem is if Republicans fail to come up with their own, work plan, and we don't, and so the Democrats come at the Republicans and try to, say we have this whole plan, and maybe the plan sucks, but like it's a plan, and you don't have a plan. Like that, there's at least they have a plan, so we'll go with theirs. If we don't come up with our own, workable solution to this, we will end up with something like the UK's kind of system. This kind of nightmarish, thing where there's no alternative. So really at this point, I'm kind of curious as to what are ways that the government can sort of, because the government already is involved in healthcare, what are ways that we have the government without expanding its reach? And basically what I don't like about the Democrat plans is the whole idea of, one payer, like the government plan is the only plan. That's obviously, that never works. It's never good to have just one option at anything. It's always good to have more. So the Republicans need to look more seriously at kind of these mixed options where there is this government option or whatever for people who will be, dropped by private insurance companies if you just let the insurance companies decide who to cover, their pre-existing conditions thing. And Trump was always, that was how he, made a kind of a centrist appeal is we won't have Obamacare, but we will protect people with pre-existing conditions. And in practice, it's turned out that the Republican Party can't be made to work on this because the Republicans don't believe in protecting pre-existing conditions right now.
Well, there's obvious reasons for that, but Vendetta, you want to know how much I pay per month for family medical insurance? $208 a month is what I pay for family coverage. You want to know why that is? I work for a very big company that is self-insured. They didn't go to someone like Blue Cross Blue Shield or any of that. We are a self-insured company. There's enough of us that we all pay in to a collective fund, $208 a month. And then, Mistress, you've been with me for many years now. Have you ever had to pay out of pocket to go to a doctor?
No, never.
Have you ever paid for a prescription?
No.
That's the private market. That's the free market, my friend.
That is good, man. That has worked out for you. The problem is on a large scale, it hasn't worked out like that for many people in the country. And curious, if this is an option in the free market, do most companies not do this because it's not competitive for them to do so? And can the market be adjusted to incentivize companies to go with this kind of plan as opposed to these expensive generic plans?
The reason that we don't do that is because of insurance lobbies. That's why they've protected themselves by ensuring their existence. And so while Walmart should be able to be privatized, they're not. They outsource their insurance. They should have in-house insurance. They're big enough. They make plenty of profit to be able to provide adequate insurance to their employees, even as a benefit. I mean, as a full benefit, free insurance. They make enough profit to be able to provide that for their employees. But they don't. And they don't because insurance companies have a fantastic lobby.
Well, let me interject real quick, and I'll tell you why. My insurance with this co-op of companies that are in this private medical fund, why are we able to get insurance so cheap? Because there's a shit ton of power. I work for a Fortune 100 company, and my company works with other companies to create this fund for our healthcare benefits. And these back in the day were called health co-ops, which was basically like a bunch of blacksmiths would get together and say, we all know that we break our fingers sometimes on the anvil. So to all help each other stay in business, let's start a fund. So when someone needs something, we can all help him. And that's actually how the idea of an insurance corporation started, was medical co-ops in the trades. That's how the, what were they called? The Friendly Society, which eventually became the Masons, stuff like that. I may be getting my names messed up, but it just starts as saying, hey, we're all Masons, so let's pool a certain amount of our income, so if one of us breaks his leg, his family won't starve to death. That's how this whole insurance idea started. And that's the problem in the United States, is we tend to confuse and conflate two terms: health care and medical insurance. These are two totally different things. When you go to a doctor for a checkup, that is health care. When you break your leg and go to the emergency room, get a $10,000 bill, and your insurance company pays for it, that is medical insurance. Healthcare and medical insurance are only tangentially related. That would be like saying when I change the oil in my truck, that's auto insurance. No, it's not. Your auto insurance will never pay for an oil change. Your auto insurance is for when a catastrophe happens, which is what medical insurance is supposed to be for. And the reason that medical costs, the reason that healthcare costs have skyrocketed is because of Medicare and Medicaid. I know plenty of people who work in the healthcare industry. And here's the thing. If you go to the doctor and you get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, so you need insulin every month, they are going to write you a bill for your monthly insulin that's like $1,200 a month if you're a broke-ass fat black woman. And Medicare, Medicaid, whatever it is going to pay that $1,200 a month because it's a dumbass government program. A private insurance company sees that bill and they go, oh, fuck you. And they go and they negotiate that shit down to, $200 or $300 because they know it's an inflated bullshit number. But the government pays it, and as long as the government pays it, that price tag will continue to inflate, just as we saw with the housing bubble, just as we are seeing with the student loan bubble. That's the same thing as the healthcare bubble. This is like the everything bubble. Every time the government puts its finger into something, that something balloons out of control in costs, and then eventually when that bubble bursts, it takes us all down with it. But going back to my point, when you have a large private self-insured group of people and you say, hey, this insulin is $1,200, we're going to say, oh, go fuck yourself. No, it's not. And then if they say, oh, well, you're going to pay it because that's the price, we say, all right, well, all 25 million of us are going somewhere else. And all of a sudden that price goes down to $150 real fucking quick.
That was actually one of the more interesting proposals I just remembered. In proposals, or maybe even became policy under Trump, was the idea of allowing Medicare and Medicaid to negotiate prices and actually allow them to fight for prices. Because legally right now they don't do it. It's not in their option. But in theory, they could bargain with a lot of power, because if the government is not going to, government's going to be your biggest customer, basically, if the government's insuring that many people. So it could give it could be one way to drive down prices quite a bit. My bottom line is I'm not really an expert in healthcare at all. My expertise is in foreign policy, geopolitics kind of stuff. But the right, I'm saying, has to come to some sort of, we need to actually have a healthcare plan, more or less, by people who know what they're talking about, and something that we can actually present as a counter. And in general, in response to Yang, the problem, right now shouldn't be, if you don't like him, the problem is not so much trying to tear him down, because his odds are still like, he's still very much like the underdog in this whole race for the Democrats. And he could actually, I think he has the potential to go.
I think he's the first politician ever to start his campaign with a negative 2% name recognition.
Yeah, but based on what I saw at the meeting, he's going to be formidable if he gets to the debate stage, and he did qualify for the debate stage. He recently got enough donors for that. So again, we don't know so much where Yang's going to go or how well it's going to go, and the concern isn't necessarily so much about like destroying him personally or taking him down or like owning the Yang gang or whatever. It's basically noticing the fact that he's touched on these key issues that people care about. That's why he's suddenly exploded in popularity. And he's identified key topics that basically the right has not, or Trump's administration has not provided an answer to. And what we need to do is, if you want to oppose him from the right, you need to figure out like the answers to the right and kind of get them nailed down and get everybody agreeing on that, and offer an alternative. Or what's a better answer to this question Yang brought up than what Yang is saying? And that's how we would actually convince people.
The answer to every question of government is this. Will it involve taxes? The answer, then don't do it. If the answer is yes, don't do it. Will it restrict freedoms? The answer is don't do it. Will it grow the government? The answer is don't do it. Will it shrink the government? Then do it. Will it remove regulation? Do it. Will it give the people more individual rights while taking rights from the government? Do it. What we're proposing with Yang is literally a central planning nightmare straight out of fucking 1984. And any of you who can't see that need to be bitch slapped in the face.
All right. So what Vendetta is basically saying is you all have homework and you need to go through your policies and the things that are important to you and the things that you know about, and you need to write something up and submit it to your peers. And then it needs to be reviewed by your peers and adjusted into something that we can present as an alternative solution. And we need to use our mouthpieces, particularly Tucker Carlson. We need to, because that is a white guy who will say the things that we want to say. He says it all the time.
A white goy, as a matter of fact.
Oh, white goy. Yes. So Tucker is our biggest asset. We've known it for a while. They are beginning to come at him with his past. He is unapologetic. I hope that he remains that way. But he is a big face. He is a big voice, and he is a white man. And we can take our ideas and we can get them to Tucker. That is one person who has some power, who has a voice, who knows the people that need to know these things, that can have the conversations with him in public where everybody can see it on a platform that everybody has access to. And we need to utilize it. And I'm not trying to say push our fringe beliefs on Tucker to try to get him to name the Jew or any of that. I'm just saying our basic needs as white people, what we need to function best in this society and to try and maintain majority in our country. And even if it's impossible at this moment to conceive of a way for us to maintain the majority, we can still affect our own lives, and whether we're receiving what we need from the government, whether we're able to get what we need ourselves, whether we have to fight stupid local co-ops and stupid permit laws that stop you from being able to garden in your own backyard, that kind of thing. We need to actually do what Vendetta says and think about the things that we can change, the plans that we need to take action, shape them with each other, and get them to somebody that can help us, because screaming out in the dark and relying on a Chinese man to actually care about the white man. I mean, just because he knows what's going on, just because he can see the writing on the wall, doesn't mean that his instincts to protect us. It just means that he can see the writing on the wall, and that doesn't protect us. We have to protect ourselves. We have to advocate for ourselves. And so let's do it. Let's do that work that Vendetta suggested. Put down plans, real plans that could be implemented or at least looked at by our legislators. Let's make sure that they get them.
Let me interject here and say,
you will not interject.
If you really have ideas about policy, about ways to fix things, like job loss to automation that won't end up like the time machine, which is basically the manual for what Andrew Yang is proposing, is you're going to have the Morlocks like me who will be programming and maintaining automated systems, and then you'll have the Eloy up there playing fucking video games and sucking up the Yang Bucks. And I promise you, I will not feel the least bit of sorrow when you come to the siren like cattle to slaughter and I eat you, you fucking pathetic Eloy, if you try to vote to take my wealth from me. But that aside, if you do have policy ideas for a real third position where we can come at the left from the left, where we can come at the right from the right, where we can set ourselves apart from both of the traditional parties in the U.S., please feel free to send me your policy ideas. And believe it or not, things are happening. And we can get these ideas in front of people. Like Dizzy said, things are happening behind the scenes that a lot of you aren't aware of. But please give me ideas. I am a policy wonk. If you listen to my show, you'll know that on every episode, I have a new thing to talk about, whether it be student loan debt, automation, UBI. I have a new issue every week on my show, and I take these issues very seriously. So don't think we're just blabbering into the ether here. These are serious conversations that can make serious differences. So don't be afraid to give me or Dizzy or Vendetta your ideas, because you might see them implemented in the future.
Okay, so do we want to switch gears to Europe now?
Yes. Vendetta, did you have a chance? Vendetta, did you have a chance to research the fall of the Finnish government?
I'll tell you what, I didn't get to look more than, glance at one article about it. But the story there seems to be what's kind of common throughout Europe, is in the center right is collapsing because its voters, they're not, the center right is not pushing any sort of policies that their voters actually want to hear. And the voters are quietly leaving and going over toward, Finland's far right party, the True Finns, is still, they're about 13%, which puts them now pretty much closed in with the other major parties there. There are 5 major parties. Top one is like 20-ish something percent, and the rest of them are all in the teens. So more or less they're about even with all the rest now. And I'd still say, Finland's pretty, they're not close to having the right take over there, but the center is falling apart as it is elsewhere. So that's good news.
Doc, do you want to tell us about Finland?
Yeah, sorry. I thought Vendetta would, as usual, talk for like 10 minutes and I'd be able to.
I have not been paying attention to Finland a lot lately.
Okay. I don't know if any of you remember, there was a podcast. It ended like 3 or 4 years ago, but there used to be a podcast called Radio Free Skyrim. Do any of you remember it?
Nope.
Okay, on that podcast, there was a Dane, a Swede, a Finn. There was 4 of them. Which one am I missing?
I'm pretty sure there were 2 Danes or 2.
Anyway, there was one. There was a representative basically from each Scandinavian country, and I remember I listened to that podcast religiously because I love Scandinavian politics, and they talked about these emerging parties, these emerging far-right parties in these countries that have been so far left for so long, like Sweden and etc. And it sounded crazy 5 or 6 years ago. You had the True Finns in Finland. You had the Swedish Democrats. You had the Danish independence. I can't remember what the Danish, but you had far right parties coming out of nowhere. And on their first run, they were getting almost no votes. And then 2 years later, in the next election, they were getting like 5 and 6%, and it sounded hopeful. Well, in the last election in Finland, the True Finns, which was the far right nationalist party, which everyone thought was just a crazy LARP, they became the second most powerful party in the country. And this is where things went horribly wrong. And this is the reason why these labels of right and left don't really make sense anymore, and why I advocate for a third position. But the True Finns actually got into power as the second largest coalition in the parliament, and immediately started fighting with each other, because while they could absolutely agree that they hate Muslim immigrants and they want closed borders, half of them wanted a smaller government, a smaller state, and to cut taxes. The other half was all about welfare and wanted a bigger state and wanted more welfare. So now the nationalists split on socialist and non-socialist lines, which put the government into a standstill, a Mexican standoff over welfare policy. And since the parties could not come to any sort of agreement on welfare reform, the entire government resigned as of Friday night, just this last Friday night. That's the story of Finland.
Their entire government resigned.
Their coalition fell apart. The government, as in like the prime minister and the cabinet, all went.
Well, if you know their names, just keep watching for signs of life, because the Finns like to eat people. They like to eat people. I'm sorry, they do.
Well, they are Asian. I mean, it's not surprising.
/brackets, our cannibals.
Vendetta, I honestly figured that in the intervening time since we talked earlier, you would look more into this, because you're my foreign policy guy. I mean, I can give
I
about
looked
it,
a bit into it, but I got distracted with other things. I'm always, in this case, getting distracted by the U.S. Army doing dumb shit.
Okay, can you talk about the fact that we're pulling our diplomats out of Venezuela and what that could mean, while we have 5,000 soldiers in Colombia, plus a lot of military aircraft?
Well, could mean one of several things. One is pretty much clearing them out of the way for if we do plan to start, a military conflict, then we don't want there to be hostages. That could be one thing. It could be a bad sign if they are planning to do some sort of action. Or it could be a good sign if they want them out of there, because those diplomats getting harmed could be the trigger for such action. Remember, we said, they gave us, you have this long to withdraw them, and the U.S. said, no, we won't do that. Well, the thing is, if you leave them there, then suppose they get seized, and then you have a hostage crisis, which, what was our last one? The Iranian one? That didn't go so well for us. It's pretty embarrassing.
I'll throw out there, for those who aren't aware of some of the history here, since the rebellion, or whatever you want to call it, against Maduro, who is currently the president of Venezuela, ever since the infrastructure really went to shit and the people started protesting and decided that this Guaido guy is their president or whatever, the U.S. came out strongly in support of Guaido, the pretender to the throne, as it were. And Maduro, and this was months ago, Maduro said, I'm going to give you 72 hours to peacefully withdraw all of your citizens and all of your diplomats. You will not be harassed. Just get them out of here so they don't get hurt. Well, Trump refused, although I think it was Bolton or Pompeo, but it came from Trump's administration, a refusal to pull our people out of there, because they say that Maduro is not the legitimate leader of the country, so he has no right to tell us to pull our diplomats out. And I had a very good friend who I've been very good friends with for many years, who I was discussing this with. And she and I were talking about this one morning. And I said, what do you think? We need to get our people out of there. And she says, well, Maduro has no right to tell us to get our people out. And I said, but we're dangling them as bait. We have an opportunity to get them out peacefully. Let's do it. She says, no, he has no right to kick our people out. And if our people get hurt, it's time to go to war. I've never spoken to her since. And we had been friends, very close friends for years. And that's how seriously I feel about war, about intervention in sovereign nations. If you want to use my son, for example, to go and kill people because of stupid political machinations when you had an option to get your people out, but you're instead using them as bait, go fuck yourself and fuck your mother. But now our people didn't get hurt, and now we are pulling them out. And Vendetta, you say that you think it's a possibility that we're ramping up to do something and we're pulling our people out beforehand, right?
It's a possibility, or it's a possibility that we're actually doing the sensible thing here and we just didn't want to do it right away because we had to look, like we're not getting pushed around or whatever. And they care a lot about like these sort of like playground appearances of who's looking tough right now and who's not. And it's fun and games, but when you're playing with weaponry that kills thousands of people, at a certain point it's just kind of dumb to treat it like it's your two kindergartners pushing each other around on the playground.
Yeah, well, again, once our people are out, I assume you saw the videos of our helicopters landing by the score in Colombia. So you know that we already have people on the border. And, oh, God, I want your opinion on this. I mentioned it on John Q. Publius's show a few weeks ago. Fucking Marco Rubio tweeted out a picture of Gaddafi being lynched as if he was proud of it. What do you think about that and Marco Rubio and how desperate he is for intervention in Venezuela?
I mean, it's just it's honestly pretty sick coming from a guy like Marco Rubio, who's like this pasty office guy who was probably never thrown a punch in his life or whatever, getting off on this sort of violence that he would never himself have the courage to inflict on people, and getting off like that on a distance and bragging about it. Like, it's his scalp that he's waving around. I find it kind of disgusting. That's why, my first reaction to that is, I propose, let's solve this. Let's have him and Maduro meet and have a boxing match and decide who's the president of Venezuela based on who wins that. Because I bet Maduro would kick his fucking ass. And Maduro's some fat old bus driver, but he'd still do it. But what are we talking? Yeah, Colombia. The thing about Guaido is that we got this idea. Once again, the neocons are fucking dupes. They're the worst at picking proxies in other countries. Because what happened when we invaded Iraq was he had a guy called Ahmed Chalabi. Ahmed Chalabi came to the neocons and said that I'm this really popular resistance figure in Iraq, and I can lead. If we go and invade, I will have this army of people who will come to me and liberate the country, and it'll all be easy. And so we did that, and it turns out like this guy's a nobody there that everybody hates, and nobody listened to him. And they had elections. This guy got like 0%, and he was a joke. And that was our guy that we relied on him. The neocons relied on him for intelligence about like what exactly would happen in this country. And like they based their entire plan about what he told them, which is all a bunch of bullshit. Well, it looks like this happened again. And Guaido was pretty much telling them that I will be able to get like 50% of the army to defect to me and stuff if you back me up. And, we did our, okay, they're like, yes, this is great. And they did that and they backed him up. And it turns out like, nobody's defected to him. They're like counting like a couple hundred defectors here and there, like out of hundreds of thousands. Nobody has joined him. He does not have the army on his side. So they talk about like Maduro, he's not the legitimate president. He doesn't have rights. Like, in a certain sense, like rights don't exist. Rights are pretty much what you can rights depend on the ability to actually back them up with force. And if this guy, if Maduro is the guy that the army of Venezuela listens to, yeah, he's the president of the country. It doesn't matter what's legitimate or what's right about it. Like, he's the guy that's in charge there, and he's the guy that when he says jump, the country will jump. And Guaido does not have anybody really. And there's so much just bullshit that's coming out of this, like all these videos that come out of Venezuela, pretty much in kind of on anybody, you know, and on both sides, really. It's all a bunch of lies. Like they had this, one of these things was this huge concert they had recently, which is supposed to be, it was over the border in Colombia, but they were going to do this huge Live Aid type concert. And we're going to invite, you know, we're going to get some famous musicians there, and we're going to play, and we're going to raise all this money for like aid convoys to Venezuela. And they posted these claims that we got 250,000 people here and stuff. And then they actually found the crowd shots from this, like the overhead shots. And it's like, yeah, you have like 5,000 or 10,000 people at this thing. And they find many of these videos that are like the huge street demonstrations are like, actually, this was filmed last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Like these aren't what's happening right now. So basically, like, don't trust anything posted to social media, more or less, on Venezuela unless you verify it yourself. And especially don't trust if it's coming from these, like, you know, blue check accounts with an agenda.
We're kind of just talking about Venezuela and Colombia, but you talk about how you can't trust social media coming out of certain countries, and that makes me think there's a certain account that a lot of the alt-right follows. I don't know if he considers himself alt-right or not, but he's in Venezuela. And he's saying, please, Daddy United States, come rescue me. He's got like 10,000 followers. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Are you talking about JoJo?
No, it's got a K. I can't remember. It's irrelevant. But there is this guy in Venezuela. Every time we say, let's just keep our hands off and let them deal with their own problems, this guy's like, I've spent 72 hours without power.
Uh-oh.
It sucks. Can the U.S. please come save me? And it's like, tell me one place where the U.S. military came in, deposed a leader, and life got better. Name one fucking place. That's the end of what I have to say on Venezuela. But since I have my foreign policy advisor on, let's talk about Pakistan for a minute. Vendetta, what do you got?
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Well, part of what's going on over there is, you know, I found an article from years and years ago. That's a very fun read. It was by there's the war nerd. He's sort of, it was a character that was like an American nationalist sort of character created by John Dolan, who's a guy who's actually, you know, a leftist, but he's got he's still worth reading. And anyway, he wrote about the India-Pakistan conflict at the time in like 2002. It was called, let me just find it, Fag versus Fag, the India-Pakistan phony war. Introductory paragraph, will India and Pakistan ever finish the cat fight and get on with a real war? We live in hope, like my grandma used to say, but don't hold your breath. Listening to the Indian Paki generals shaking their little fists to each other, little mustaches going up and down, and hearing the Indians talk about their patience is almost exhausted. It just gets me down. This fag slapping shit gives war a bad name. I used to live next to a house full of Pakistanis in Santa Ana. They were at brothers or cousins or something, and they ran this pirate cab company. They fought nonstop, but I never saw a single punch thrown. It was this weird Pakistani style of fighting. They'd yell for hours before they escalated to slapping. Weird downward slaps like elephants hitting each other with their trunks. After a couple minutes of that, they'd each retreat about 5 yards and look around for car parts to throw. They'd keep throwing until they were tired or until they accidentally hit one of their half-fixed taxis parked in the yard. That was the only thing that sobered them up, hurting a car. When they drew blood on each other, they'd cheer, but if they broke a windshield, they'd instantly stop fighting right up the car, moaning and sobbing. The way those cab drivers fought is the way India and Pakistan fight. Basically, this is almost a repeat of what's happened again. They have this standoff. They had their little the planes shoot down and the mortars shooting back and forth and the artillery shelling. They moved around a lot of their tanks and stuff, but at the end of the day, you could tell, if you know a little about Indian politics, that they weren't going to push this to its conclusion. So Modi is the leader of India, and he's a nationalist, Hindu nationalist or whatever. And then in Pakistan side, they got it there. Got their own new guy who's another one of those people that compare to Trump, like the independent outsider, Imran Khan, who was like a big sports star, became the president there. Now Modi is basically he gets if you read like the left press on him at all, they'll go on about how he's a fascist and stuff, and and how he did he's horrible to the Muslims or whatever. But in reality, he's more of like what we call a conservative. He's a guy who's big on like neoliberalism and opening up the economy and getting America to come and open foreign investment there and stuff. And he's not really like as hardcore as his voters would imagine it to be. In fact, it's almost like our situation with Trump right now. Anyway, Modi has an election coming up pretty soon. It's actually looking tough for him. So this was the time to show like I'm tough on Pakistan without actually having to follow through and fight a full war with Pakistan. Now they had this terrorist attack that came up, and they had coincident where they blew up a bus full of like Indian paramilitary guys, and India's gotten hit with a few terrorist attacks like that in the past 15 years or so. Like there's these groups based in Pakistan, Islamic terror groups that go over the border and launch raids or launch attacks in India. Sometimes they do it in Kashmir, which is the disputed province that India owns 2/3 of. It's basically Muslim territory, but India has it and won't give it up. And sometimes they go and do terror attacks like in India, like they at one point did a huge shooting spree in Mumbai, I think, which is Bombay, and where Bollywood is based. The Indians in the past pretty much didn't retaliate to these because, Pakistan has nuclear weapons. We have nuclear weapons. Like, what can you actually do to a country that has nuclear weapons? If you start, you can't really, it limits you from starting a war with them. Well, this time around, India, Modi is going to prove I'm tough, and I'm like, I don't tolerate shit from Muslims anymore like before. So he told the Pakistanis either, you attack, you get rid of these terrorists, or else we'll come in and do it, and we'll hit them. And it's kind of one of those things that's meant to be like an empty gesture, really, of like, because as soon as he said that and pretty much identified which terrorists that he's going to, retaliate against, like those terrorists are not going to stick around in their base and wait to get bombed. So they left their camps and went and hid places. So by the time the Indians actually came in and launched their little bombing raids, like you're blowing up a bunch of empty tents and empty buildings. And the Indians claimed that they killed all these people, and the Pakistanis claimed, no, you didn't. You hit a bunch of empty buildings. And in general, the Pakistan is the side that actually has, pictures from the scene. Like India's got, pictures from like some camp you bombed years ago, which was an entirely different place. And India's bullshitting. Now, the Pakistanis also pretty much said, if you come into our airspace and bomb in our territory, we're going to treat it as an invasion, and we're going to shoot your planes.
All right. Right here, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
You're talking about fake footage that's actually from years ago. Did you see on Twitter yesterday or the day before where they were using old footage to claim that an Israeli pilot had been shot down in Pakistan?
An Israeli pilot. Okay. There's the fun part is where India has a relationship with India's got kind of a complicated diplomatic position because they're a country, for one, they're like close to Russia, as in like tons of the Indian military's equipment is Russian made. Their tanks are all Russian T-90 ones, and India actually has a license to make them for themselves. And so what's funny is the Indian Army, we view India as kind of a joke, but like actually it's Europe that's a fucking joke now. Like if you actually put Europe next to any, if you put Germany or France next to India or the UK, like any of our big NATO allies, the Indians could fucking crush them. With they've got way more tanks, way more fighter planes than any European country has. But anyway, they rely on the Russians for a lot of the equipment. So they're, if we want to go into great military detail about like the shoot down, kind of interesting because the what planes got shot down were like MiG-21s. But I'm not going to get distracted with that yet. The point was Israel is also a major arms dealer to India. And what Israel does now is that they don't really make planes for themselves anymore. At one point they tried to. They had a project called the Lavi, and the United States essentially killed the project, and they said, you're going to buy F-16s, you're going to buy our planes instead. And so then they went and sold their designs to China, and China ended up making fighters with features of these. But the Israelis, what they do now is they buy our planes, but they put their upgrades in them. They do their own electronics and radars and ECM and stuff. So they go to India, and India takes its Russian-made fighters or French-made fighters, and then Israel will do upgrades in them or will provide them with weapons. So there were Israeli like bombs that were dropped on these places. And Pakistan, the people of Pakistan hate Israel like any, sensible people, or at least any, typical Muslim country as well. And in the past, Pakistan actually sent pilots to go and fight in the various wars against Israel. And the Pakistanis generally were of much better quality as, pilots and as soldiers in general than most of the Arab countries. So when they actually sent them, like most of the Arab air-to-air victories were scored by like Pakistani or by North Korean pilots, basically. But anyway, yeah, it wouldn't be surprising if the Pakistanis want to claim it, because generally Pakistan came out the winner of this because they got to shoot down a couple of Indian planes and say that the Indians did nothing, and then what are you going to do about it? In India, essentially at this point, like, what is Modi going to do about it? Because you want to make it a full war. And the problem is Modi is like a conservative business guy, basically. And having this war would actually be really bad for business. So he's not going to do it.
Well, I am hearing it was like old, not accurate footage. The Pakistanis saying that they shot down an Indian plane and they pulled an Israeli pilot out of it. But the footage wasn't true to fact. But I'm hearing that the story is true, that they
did shoot down an Indian plane and catch an Indian pilot.
But I'm hearing that it was an Israeli pilot, and it's been confirmed by a few sources that I somewhat trust. So you're saying that's not true? As you said,
I would say that's not true. I mean, they know specifically which pilot it is, and it's an Indian guy. It's a dark Indian guy. That's they have him on video, like he's the guy that they sent back, and because they returned him. That was the other thing, is that Modi keeps, he just wants to look good basically for the election. And the problem is that Imran Khan and the Pakistanis keep making him look like a bitch over and over. Because the plan after the shootdown was, okay, we're not gonna have talks with the Pakistanis until you hand over our pilot. And sort of, then Modi hadn't gotten on TV yet to do his speech about how we demand his return and stuff. And Imran Khan got on TV first, and he did this whole speech about this thing and how, this, that. Oh, by the way, we're gonna send their pilot back before. And he did that before Modi even got on TV to air his demands. So it's just, here, we're giving them to you because we feel generous, not because you demanded it. Well, and so once again, Modi looks dumb.
Pakistan is killing it on social media throughout this whole conflict. Their soldiers are tweeting. They are killing it on social media. And India doesn't seem to have any response as far as the world stage goes on social media. Why do you think that is?
It's curious, but basically Pakistan is the shitlords, and Indian Twitter, I've actually gone and seen that Indian Twitter is like boomer hell. Like they're the ones who spread they spread the same kind of like, patriotard memes about like, yeah, we're just like the say, you've all seen them, like the boomer tweets about America's number one, America's back and stuff. And like they do that as India, and like India's number one and stuff. But, Pakistan is more like these, shitlords who just make them look fucking dumb. And, I don't know. It's just national character, I guess. And I can't really explain it. India is just kind of bad at Twitter.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and start wrapping things up.
Yeah, it's
Let's
been
go ahead and
long
start
enough.
with you, Dizzy. What do you have to say? You can hit YangBang, Scandinavia, Pakistan. What do you want to talk about? What's your final thoughts, Diz?
I just have some production notes and announcements. Do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, this is your wrap up. This will be the last time you talk tonight.
Okay. If anybody enjoyed the show, please press like. Please subscribe to the channel. Please share the episode. You can find us all on Twitter. If you would like to come onto the podcast, which is normally hosted on a website, I put the link in the live chat. And once the episode goes live, I believe that we are going to add everybody's information to the description. So that you can find us on Twitter, ask questions, contact us, turn in your homework. Also, Doc and Vendetta are planning on it's not a solo project. It's an additional project that you need to bully them about if you're hearing this. As a sort of weekly wrap up, I'm really excited to for them to take on this project and just kind of wrap up the news, go over brief things that are going on in case you don't have time to babysit the TV or the news all the time. So always remember to bully Doc and Vendetta about their show that they're supposed to be starting that they haven't named yet. And also like and subscribe Thought Process.
All right. Thank you, Dizzy. As she mentioned, she's my co-host on my regular show called Illusion Radio. You can find us at illusionofsanity.libsyn.com. I fucked that all up. And Vendetta, close us out. Whatever you want to say, my brother.
I'm so glad that you brought up Tucker Carlson earlier. If there's one person to still have faith in on the right, he's our guy. Follow his lead basically on and look to him for guidance of what's good, because he's the only one who's shown good judgment pretty much from the start, almost invariably in every topic. And I would say basically in regard to Yang, take your cue from Tucker and see Yang, the rise of Yang is basically is an opportunity rather than something to panic over right now, and look to it as an opportunity on how we can better our own arguments and how we can improve our platforms after Trump's kind of run it into the dirt a bit these last few months in his term in general. That'll be pretty much all for me tonight. Thank you for having me on again, as always. I appreciate it.
Are you saying that you didn't vote to spread feminism in Uganda?
I think they've already got feminism there, or at least in Rwanda. I know they have more women than men now in their parliament. Maybe Rwanda should be trying to spread it here. Yeah, but I didn't vote for this shit.
All right, that is a joke. Actually, Dizzy, I'm going to give you one more chance to speak, but keep it short. A lot of the alt-right is totally disillusioned with Trump, particularly after he signed yet another appropriations and spending bill with $100 million for Ivanka to lead a program to spread feminism to the third world and women's rights and all that. What would you say to disillusioned and angry Trump voters, since you are still trying to rally the troops, Diz?
About trying to spread feminism to Uganda and other places?
Just in general, to those who are saying, fuck Trump, I'm going to vote for Yang, or I'm going to vote for Kamala, just to give them a middle finger. What are your thoughts to keep people on the Trump train?
That's a tough one. I wasn't involved in anyone's decision or emotional decision or practical decision to vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Trump myself. I became a fan of Trump post-election. pre-alt-right. And Trump won me on a few issues. I don't think that his politics are necessarily helpful, sometimes hurtful, sometimes neutral, sometimes helpful. But he was never a white nationalist. He was always pro-Israel. And because of certain promises, i.e., the wall, i.e., immigration, people let that slide and forgot about it over time because the other issues are so much more important. For me, what Trump is doing is forcing conversations to happen. And I would prefer for that to happen for another 4 years. I know other people are ready for a revolution right now. I am ready for a revolution right now too, but nobody's going to do the thing that's going to start the revolution. So our options here are to refine our needs. As Vendetta pointed out before, we're not. And I wholeheartedly agree that we need to. Another term of Trump, even if he's exactly what he's doing right now, even if that's all that we get, even if it's just him posturing and doing weird things that we don't quite understand, and because I don't get the Ivanka thing. I don't get. I don't know if it's just a project that she wanted to do or if there's a purpose behind. I don't know. I can't predict that. But to agitate the media has been a boon for us. It has been difficult. We have fought censorship on our own this entire time. On our own this entire time. We fight censorship every day. And Trump agitating the media has helped us in immeasurable ways. We are having conversations, edgy conversations, important conversations in the real world with real people that we weren't allowed to have ever before in our lifetimes. And I think that I think that that's incredible. I couldn't even admit it to myself until I found the alt-right. And now I'm talking about it everywhere I go. It's a huge, huge, huge thing. And that's why I continue to support Trump, because what he's doing for me is what I need right now. And what I need is I need to be able to have the conversations I'm having. And the left is trying to shut us down.
You just support real life meetups because I've picked you up and spun you around in the parking lot of a bar in Dallas, Texas once.
Restaurant bar.
I thought of my closing statement. I forgot a better closing statement. Fuck Jared Kushner and fuck Charlie Kirk, and that'll be all.
Oh
Right.
God! Don't even get me started on Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, and all. Oh God, damn it!
I guess we have an idea for our next live stream.
We could do 2 hours on this fucking bullshit, but we've already gone over 2 hours tonight. I just want to say thank you, Vendetta, for coming on to discuss this stuff on a weeknight. I know it's, not the most opportune time. Thank you to everyone who listened. We actually set a new record for active listening tonight on our third live stream we've ever done. Thank you, Dizzy, for coming on. I know you have work in the morning, unlike me. I love you both. Love all my listeners. And again, if you just came across this video on YouTube for some strange reason, me and Dizzy have a podcast called Illusion Radio. You can find it at illusionofsanity.libsyn.com. It's free. Feel free to check us out. And with that, good night. All right, we're done.